Hey, konnichiwa minasan, it's Gray from Wakazashi's Tea House home in Japan. How you doing? You good? You genki? Okay, I have a book review today. Bit of a change from comic reviews. I want to talk about Stephen King's latest novel, Fairy Tale, which came out, I think it was in autumn last year, so 2022. It's his newest book, and yeah, I've got something to show you. I'm going to make the screen big for a minute because I want to show I actually picked up a hardcover copy of this. Just bear with me for 1 second. Here we go. So this is the first hardcover I've bought in a long time, and I read it back in October last year, and I'm only getting around to do my review of it now. It's Stephen King, so no surprises that this is a fairly thick, heavy, long book. Now my edition, it's the UK edition, it's 592 pages, and it also contains some really nice black and white illustrations at the beginning of each chapter. There are two artists that work on that. Let me just double check. They are Gabriel Rodriguez and Nicolas Delors. So Rodriguez does the odd numbered chapters and Nicolas Delors does the even numbered chapters. I'm not sure why, but let me just show you very briefly. The first chapter opens here like this. I hope that's coming out. I know how bad the camera is with focusing, but we'll see. So that's chapter 1. See if we can get an even one as well. Well, that was longer than I thought. Here's chapter 4. Here's an even one. Give you an idea. So yeah, nice to have those illustrations at the beginning of the chapters. So I'm going to read from my review on WordPress. Here we go. Of course, the book's title is self-explanatory. It's called Fairy Tale. And here's the publisher's synopsis. Legendary storyteller Stephen King goes into the deepest well of his imagination in this spellbinding novel about a 17-year-old boy who inherits the keys to a parallel world where good and evil are at war, and the stakes could not be higher, for that world or for ours. Okay, and this is from the author, Stephen King, what he wrote about it, just a little introduction to the book. It says here, early in the pandemic, King asked himself, what could you write that would make you happy? As if my imagination had been waiting for that question to be asked, I saw a vast deserted city, deserted but alive. I saw the empty streets, the haunted buildings, a gargoyle head lying overturned in the street. I saw smashed statues of what I didn't know, but I eventually found out. I saw a huge sprawling palace with glass towers so high their tips pierced the clouds. Those images release a story I wanted to tell. And again, I like to keep my reviews spoiler free, so don't worry about that. It's just it's a short review, this one, just basically telling you roughly what it's about and what I liked about it. Okay, here's my review. Fairy Tale tells the story of Charlie Reed, a high school student who's both good at sports and his academic studies. But Charlie has had to deal with a devastating family tragedy in his past, a tragedy that led to his grieving father to seek solace in a bottle. After a random encounter with a dog called Radar and his aging owner, Charlie's life takes a truly unexpected and fantastic turn. Now, I'm talking about my WordPress blog here. This is not a video review, but I've talked or written before about King's penchant to waffle a bit too much. Wakizashi waffles, not quite as bad as King. But this time I enjoyed the slow build-up, the gradual fleshing out of the main characters, and the time we spend in the real world. Believe it or not, we don't really come across anything fantastic until after the first third of the book. King uses these first 200 or so pages to really build his world and convince us to care about his characters. It may seem like unnecessary padding to some, I think it has, but for me, it wasn't. It's so easy to read. I think one of King's gifts is to make the realistic everyday events almost as entertaining and readable. That's what's important. So readable. Almost as good as the wondrous, the incredible, the scary parts. Yes, as you can tell, I enjoyed Fairy Tale very much. Now, it isn't King's best work. It doesn't stand up maybe his top 10 books, but it took me on a fascinating journey. There are many nods, of course, to the classic fairy tales by Grimm, by Andersen, Perrault throughout the story, and it's fun recognising them. Now I'm sure I missed quite a lot. I was also pleased to see there's a Lovecraftian influence in some of the darker moments. This book is a story about fairy tales, about the hero's journey, even about the power of story itself. Refreshingly, it's also a story about love, family, and a dog. Recommended, and if I had to give it a score, I would say 7 to 7.5 out of 10. As I say, it's not one of King's greatest books, but it just really worked for me. It took me on a good journey. It was page-turning enough to keep going, despite the slow build-up, the slow start. I really liked it, and I like the characters. You got to admit, he's a master now. He's a master at building characters, and each character has its own distinctive voice. But before I go on for too long, I'm going to read very briefly from the comments I got, some of the answers to the comments from the review. So if you want to stop watching here, that's fine, and I really appreciate you watching this far. Thank you so much. But I say I'll just keep going a little bit. So one of the comments, this is from Jay. Jay said, almost every review I've read about this book says the same thing. The first part was great. After that, not so much. But your review seems more positive about the book as a whole. What was the book like for you after those first 200 pages? So a great question there from Jay. And a very short answer, I just said, I enjoyed all of it. The fairy tale scenes were pretty dark at times, also a bit weird, which I liked. I've seen the mixed reviews too. I'm not sure why, but it just worked for me. So there we go. And then there was a comment from O. I'm going to say O, yeah. O said that they heard a lot of criticism about the title, but glad to see you enjoyed it. I'm not a King fan, I must say, but this sounds like something I could stomach and maybe even enjoy. So that was O, and I replied, yeah, I've seen mixed reviews for this. Some readers really like it, others not so much. But something about the story just clicked with me. It's strange at times in this other world the main character visits. There isn't a lot of horror in here, but there are some horrible moments. Fairy tales and Lovecraftian creatures, an interesting combination. And I had B saying that King can really excel at writing characters, can't he? And I replied, yes, I think it's one of his strongest points as an author. There is some great character work in this story, especially the main character, Charlie. Now, there's one more comment there, very briefly, sorry. This is from T. Nice, glad to see you enjoyed this one. I'll certainly give it a try one of these days. It sounds very different from most of the King I've read before, though at heart it's all about the characters, and in that way, maybe it's the same. And I replied, yes, great character work by King. I've seen some reviews likening this book to parts of his Dark Tower series, which I haven't read, so that's interesting too. Okay, so that's it for my review. I hope you enjoyed it. This is Stephen King's fairy tale. I would say, not amazing, but it's a recommend. It's a strong 7.5 out of 10 for me, for Gray. So as always, thank you so much for watching. If you've read the book or if you're thinking about it, please drop me a comment. I'd love to hear from you. And if you like the video, please consider liking and subscribing. That would be awesome. So thank you so much for watching this far. I hope to see you in a future video. This is Gray from Wakazashi's Tea House, signing off for the night. Matane. Wakazashi's Tea House. Please subscribe.